Welcome back everyone and welcome to today's video. And in today's video, we're going to learn how to make these 3D printable shipping containers within Fusion 360. So with that said, let's get started. So to get started with our design, the first thing we need to do here is to create a new component. And let's go ahead and name this to 3D printable shipping container. Once you've done that, let's go ahead and create a new sketch, selecting the bottom plane. And from here, what we want to do is create a center rectangle, drag this out, and what we want to do is set the dimensions for this. So for the length of this, we're going to set this to 60 millimeters, and the width is going to be set to 120 millimeters. After that's done, press OK. Now you should have a basic rectangle sketched out. Pressing E on your keyboard, selecting this profile, drag this up to about 60 millimeters. After that's done, press OK. Now you should have a basic rectangle within your canvas. Now the first thing we could do, which is the easiest part, is to create these little patterns that sit on the right hand side and as well as on the left hand side of most shipping containers. So if we press Create Sketch, select any side of our shipping container, we can go ahead and sketch out some designs here. So by pressing a 2-point rectangle, we can go ahead and draw this out. Doesn't have to be perfect. And what we want to do now is set some dimensions. So from the very top, from this line to this edge, this is going to be 2 millimeters. From this line to this edge, this is going to be 2 millimeters. From this line to this edge here, 2 millimeters. And from the rectangle itself, this is going to be a width of 6 millimeters. After that's done, press E on your keyboard, select this profile, and type in -1.25 for our distance. Make sure the operation is set to cut and press OK. Now what we want to do is add a chamfer to these inner edges inside our design. Pressing S on our keyboard, typing in chamfer, we can go ahead and select that inner edge and this other edge here. And since we extruded this to about 1.25 millimeters, we're also going to set this to 1.25 millimeters and press OK. Now you should have a basic, kind of like a shipping container profile here. So from here, in order to repeat this pattern, we can go ahead and press S on our keyboard, type in pattern on path, and then selecting the last two features within our timeline, also making sure your object type is set to features. Select the last two features within your timeline. The path is going to be the horizontal path, which is the very top edge here. And then we can drag this out all the way to the very end. From here, as of right now, we have a total quantity of 3 being extruded out. So to fix this, we can go ahead and up the quantity. I say to anywhere between 12 and 15. So I'm going to go to 12. And then I'm going to set the distance to 115. After that's done, press OK. Now you have the basic pattern for a shipping container. And in order to mirror this onto the other side, instead of repeating this whole entire process we just did here at the very bottom, we can actually use the mirror command within Fusion to mirror these features. Pressing S on your keyboard, typing in mirror, selecting the last 3 features. Make sure the object type is set to features. The mirror plane is going to be the origin of the design that we sketched off of. So if we were to toggle off our body and then select the direct middle of our shipping container there, toggle back on our body, pressing OK. Now those features have been mirrored to the other side, and this is what we want. Pretty cool. The next thing we need to do here is to create the sketch or the design for the door for the very front of this design. Now the main focus we want to do here is to create the design for this front side, mainly let's just say any of these sides here. So for example, if you were to imagine the doors, you have door on the left, door on the right. What we can do is to focus on making one side of the door first and then mirror all those features onto the other side of the door. And then once we have all the features and designs made on this side, we can just mirror that to the other side of the rectangle that we have here. And then from there, we have a shipping container. It's pretty straightforward and simple, but making the doors does take quite a few features in order to add it. So let's go ahead and get started with that. The first thing we need to do here is to create a new sketch, selecting the front face of the rectangle, And what we want to do is to create a total of one line. So first line is going to be right in the center. Now from here, we need to create a rectangle, which is going to sit right in the left-hand side. And we want to dimension this out from this line to this edge. This is going to be 3 millimeters. From this line to this edge, 3 millimeters. From this line to this edge here, 3 millimeters. Now, what we're doing for this is we're basically going to create what we made here on the sides, but for the door. Since a lot of doors actually do have a very similar design to this, but more or less they have a much wider profile here. So going to this, let's go back and finish up this sketch. Let's set the width of this rectangle to somewhere around 7.5. Pressing E on your keyboard, selecting that newly created profile. Let's go ahead and extrude this to negative 1.25 millimeters. After that's done, press OK. And now what we need to do here is using the chamfer tool within Fusion, repeating the exact same process. Type in 1.25 and press OK. Now you have the chamfered feature for our door, and we can go ahead and pattern this up. Pressing S on our keyboard, type in pattern. Let's go ahead and select the last two features. The path is going to be set to vertical, and then we can just drag this up all the way to the top. And let's see, we can set the distance to maybe like 55, maybe 54 instead, maybe 53, just trying to make sure, and that looks okay to me. So distance is going to be set to 53, maybe 53.5. I'm more comfortable with that. The quantity is going to be set to 5, and then press OK. Now, one unique thing about Fusion 360 is that you don't have to use the numbers that we're using here. So for example, if you wanted to make this a totally different style, you can go back within your pattern on path feature and maybe turn off one of these. So for example, maybe you don't want the middle one, or maybe you just don't want the top two for whatever reason, right? You can use the suppress feature within Fusion 360 to turn off features that we are currently using. But for now, I'm going to set the quantity to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And from here, we can continue on with our design. Now, since we're working on the left side of our door, we're going to want to make those little metal bars. So for example, a lot of shipping containers have like these little metal hinges, which basically allows you to open and lock the door and essentially keeps everything in place. Now, I couldn't tell you what the utility of those things are realistically, but more or less it gives the shipping containers a pretty cool look. And I think you'll know what I'm talking about once we make it. So from here, let's go ahead and create a new sketch. Select the front face here. And now what we can do is to create a little rectangle on this side here. Now, keep in mind, if you were to imagine this being the left door, our focus right now is on the left side. So if you imagine a line down the middle, there's a line down the middle here, which we're going to focus on. So from here, if we were to press L on our keyboard, draw this line out all the way to the bottom. Pressing D on our keyboard, we can set the dimension here to 15. Now we can focus on this little corner here. Pressing 2-point rectangle on your toolbar, from the edge to this edge here, we can maybe set this to 6, and then maybe this to 6 as well. Let's see how that looks. Maybe instead of 6, 5, and there we go. From here, pressing E on your keyboard, selecting that newly created profile, I'm going to set this to 1 millimeter. And next, we're going to create another sketch on that newly created profile, or that newly created extruded part, and create another 2-point rectangle. Drawing this out. Once more, this is going to be 1.5, and this is going to be 1.5. So from here, let's take a look. I think maybe a 1.25, just to play it safe. Now what we can do is, using this profile that we created, pressing E on our keyboard, drag this out. This is going to be 1 millimeter, and make sure the operation is set to join. After that's done, press OK. Now we have kind of like a Tetris block on our shipping container, but this is going to look very different in just a second. So by using the fillet command within Fusion, pressing F on your keyboard, we can select all 4 of these edges, for the outside square. Drag this in, and I would say 0.75. We can do the exact same thing for this outer square here, but this one's going to be a little different. This is going to be the part that looks like it's holding the bar. So by creating a new selection set, we can select these outer edges here. Whoops, not sure what happened there. Once more. These outer edges here. Drag this in all the way till it looks like a circle. And there you go. Now you have like this metal bar. Usually these have like screws attached to them right here, like on four corners. And then you have this part that's kind of acting like it's holding the metal bar. So this edge here is set to 1.25, while these outer edges for the square is set to 0.75. After that's done, press OK. Now you have kind of like a general metal bar for our design here. So moving forward, let's go ahead and repeat this pattern that we just made. Pressing S on our keyboard, typing in pattern. We can select the last 3 features because that's what we used to create this little piece. Selecting the path to the vertical path here, using that edge. Drag this out to the bottom, and I think this would be about 59. We just double check. Nope, it goes up just a bit, so maybe a little up. Oh wait, 59, maybe 58.5, 0.6. Cool, so 58.6 seems to be that perfect spot. And currently we have one sitting right in the middle, so we can increase the quantity. Let's see if we can position it. And there we go. Now we have all of these little metal rods that are going to fit the cylinder for our door. Now you don't have to have this many. More or less, I'm just trying to fit it into this little square openings that we have here. For example, if we wanted to go back within our timeline and maybe switch the quantity to something like 4, and then we can go back to this metal rod that we're making. We can change this to like 5. Now we have something that makes a little bit more sense. Of course, you can play around with the numbers to kind of achieve the look you're going for, but more or less, I'm just giving you kind of like generally what I'm trying to aim for on this video. So from here, let's move forward. I did change those numbers. We can create a cylinder right underneath this face here. Now let's take a quick look at our design. Create a center diameter circle from the center, drag it out. Doesn't have to be perfect, and whoops, what happened there? I'm going to set the dimensions for this circle to maybe 1.5. Doesn't have to be too thick, because if you make it too thick, it's going to look a little weird. From here, pressing E on your keyboard, selecting this profile, set the extend type to to object, and then we can select the very bottom of our design and make sure the operation is set to join. After that's done, press OK. Now if we take a look and home view this, now we have the metal bar for our design. Now at this point, since we've been working with Infusion 360, most of the time our design is going to look, very silvery, right? That's just the default appearance with Infusion. But let's go ahead and add some colors. That way you can kind of differentiate what this looks like. So by pressing A on our keyboard, we're going to bring up the Appearance tab with Infusion. And let's go ahead and add a blue color to this to kind of make it look more realistic for us. If we were to go to, we can use Paint Metallic since a lot of shipping containers are metallic. Let's add that onto our body here. And now our shipping container has this bluish kind of tint to it. Additionally, we can also add a silver color. So maybe silver polished. And then from here, if we were to drag silver polish into in this design feature box here, we could change the faces or the apply to change faces. And then we can add this silver polished kind of look to the faces of our design here. Now this might take you a while because you're adding it to individual faces. But more or less, I want you guys to get the general idea of what you're doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and add this, and I'm going to go ahead and speed this up as I do this entire process. Okay, so moving forward, now I have added all the color to our design here. And I quickly want to show you what this looks like once we render this because I don't use modules. I showed you what it looks like to render this. And more or less, I want you guys to see exactly what this will look like. So if we go to design, select render. Currently, we are in the rendering environment and most of your tools and additionally, most of the features that you have used will basically disappear. Um, for now, let's go ahead and set up the environment appropriate for this. So if we go to scene settings, we go ahead and set environment library, and we can add and change this to photo booth. From here, we can also change the position, which allows us to change or reorient the light. For example, if this was inside of a room, you can kind of reorient the light, and you can see kind of like the shadow and how it rotates. After that's done, I'm just selecting a simple preset, not really anything too big. If we were to render this, now this is what our shipping container would look like. Pretty cool. Now I did use a very polished silver metal for the bars. I probably should have went with just a simpler color. And from here it looks a little bit dark. So if I wanted to change the exposure and increase it, now it looks a lot different. But more or less, I'm just quickly showing you what this looks like since we're working with a shipping container, and to kind of get this to look more realistic is kind of like what the purpose of this video is, especially if we're going to be 3D printing it. So from here, let's go back to render, design, and let's go ahead and add some features to this door to finish this off. Let's go ahead and press S on our keyboard, type in pattern, and let's go ahead and add another one of these to our design, selecting the last few features here. So going all the way and then selecting the path, and we can select the vertical or the horizontal path and just drag this out. And we can also set the quantity to 4. And let's see how far we should drag this out. I'd say 66, maybe 67. To that, I have the quantity set to 4, distance set to 67, and we are copying the bars that we made for this design. After that's done, press OK. Now you should have a total of 4 within your design here. Let's go ahead and copy this part that we made here. Now, we could have just went ahead and done the exact same thing. So for example, we use the pattern on path for this thing here. We can also use the pattern on path, or excuse me, the mirror feature, to mirror the part where we added this extrude and the chamfer. So it's going back in our timeline and the pattern on path, selecting the mirror, turn off the body so we can see the mirror here, turn it back on, and press OK. Now we have the basic outlook or basic overview of our shipping container. Although it's not perfect because we still don't have any doors, for now we're just going to be focusing on the exterior and making this general look. Now, in order to create the doors, and I don't mean any folding doors or rotating doors because that's a entirely separate video, what I want to focus on is just making it look more like a door. So for now, what we could do is actually go back within our timeline, back to the very first sketch. Let's go ahead and create another sketch, selecting this face here. And just to clarify, before I move forward, I'm actually going back all the way into our timeline before we added any features to this front face. Okay? Moving forward, let's go ahead and create a 2-point rectangle. Drag this out. And let's go ahead and dimension this out. So this is going to be 2 millimeters, 2 millimeters. And from the center, since we need a line going up, this could be 2 millimeters, 2 millimeters. Then from here, we can extrude or offset this line that we created to maybe about 0.5, maybe negative 0.5 instead, so it goes out. Now we have the profile for our door. Pressing E on our keyboard, we can extrude this to about negative 0.5 or maybe, yeah, negative 0.5 looks good. Then let's go ahead and drag it back up forward. Now you kind of have like a general door for our design here. Although it's not perfect, it's not a complete door, you can kind of get the idea here. Now the reason why we added all these features here and then went back in time to create this door because I wanted to show you that although we can add as many steps as we want within our timeline, that we can still go back, add new steps, and still move it forward in time to essentially still have the exact same features that we had without it affecting whatever we made earlier, if that makes sense. So in this instance, we made that door, and I didn't want the focus to be on the door. I wanted the focus to be on designing these features here, which is the part that looks cool, right? From here, let's go ahead and mirror this door feature that we added. Selecting S on our keyboard, type in mirror, select that feature that we made, which is the door feature, mirror plane, turn it off, turn it back on. Now we have the overall look of a shipping container. Pretty cool. Now what we need to do here is to add these little squares that sit right on the very top. So I don't know if you guys seen most shipping containers, but most of the time they have like these little squares that kind of are extruded outwards. And I'm not sure what they're used for, but it kind of makes it look more like a shipping container. So let's go ahead and make those squares. So let's go ahead and create a 2-point rectangle, drag it out. This rectangle is going to be 3 millimeters from side to side. This is also going to be 3 millimeters. Let's go ahead and center this. From here, let's go ahead and set some dimensions here. This is going to be 1 and 1. Maybe instead of 1, maybe 0.75, 0.75. Go ahead and do the exact same thing for the other side. Mirror this. Here to here, 3 millimeters. Here to here, 3 millimeters. Then from this edge to this line, that's going to be, I think this was, what was that at the top? It was 0.75, so 0.75. Then edge to edge here is 0.75. After that, finish sketch. Now we can take these profiles that we have here. It looks kind of like an L. Drag this down. And then we can set the operation to join. And let's make sure it's not going to affect our design here. So press OK. And there we go. Now you kind of have like those blocks that sit at the very top. And I think you guys know what I'm referring to about what I mean by this. Additionally, what I think we could also add is make sure it extrudes to 2 sides instead. So we can have it going up just a little bit. And then selecting this profile that we have here in the middle. Pressing join. Now we kind of have this extruded piece, and maybe instead of, this might be just a negative 0.05, and this is going to be a negative 2.5. Excuse me, so this is going to be a 0.5. Negative 0.05. Why is it doing that? Let's see, negative 1. Maybe just a 2. Pressing OK. And there we go. Now we have our shipping container. The same exact thing. If we wanted to repeat this, we can also do this for the exact same time, the exact same side on the bottom. But the only thing is that since this is extruded up, that means it's going to be extruded up here. And very likely, since we're going to be 3D printing this, it's going to be kind of like the shipping container is going to be kind of off the build plate while these little squares are sitting on it, if that makes sense. That's not what we want. More or less, it's just more or less to avoid using support since we really don't need it. So that's pretty much it. This is how you make this shipping container. If we press S on our keyboard, type in mirror, we can go ahead and mirror all the features that we made for this design, and all the way from the very start, which is quite a few features. Mirror plane, turn it off, select the mirror plane there, turn it back on, and let's go ahead and press OK. And now Fusion 360 has duplicated that shipping container onto the other side, or those features for our shipping container onto the other side. And now what we could do is create an insert here to make it open. So let's see if the shell command will let us. Maybe it will not let us. So let's see if we can shell this into about 2. Most likely it won't. It's computing. Might take a minute. Oh, and it seems to have worked. Now the thing if we shell this inward is that you're going to see like we kind of have this shell made using these little extruded parts. So maybe if we shell this in a little bit more, maybe like 3, maybe it goes away. If by any chance it doesn't work, it seems to be loading, so I'm gonna just press escape and just escape that. Let's just do this another way. So if you by any chance were able to load it, great. But in this instance, I'm gonna just do this the old-fashioned way. Let's create a sketch. At the very top, let's go ahead and create a 2-point rectangle. And let's go ahead and dimension this from side to side. This is going to be 3. From side to side, this line to this side, 3. Here to here, this is also going to be 3. And from here to here, this is also going to be 3. Now let's go ahead and reorient our design. Press E on our keyboard. Select this top face. Drag this down. Since this was 60 millimeters, let's go ahead and drag this down to negative 57.5. So that way we leave a wall thickness of 2.75 for the bottom piece, or 2.5 for the bottom piece, if that makes sense. So there you go. There you have it. This is our 3D printed shipping container within Fusion 360. Let's go ahead and send this off to render. See what it looks just one more time. And now this is our completely final design. The next thing we need to do here is to send this off to print. So I'm gonna just, let's move over back to our design menu. Hover over to the body, since this is one complete body. Save as mesh, open. Now let's see what this looks like when we have it in our design here. Send this off to print, so maybe change it to a blue, since I have blue there. Cool plate. To a 0.2, slice plate, and there's our design. Pretty cool. 3 hours to print, not too bad. Lastly, one thing I want to note here is that for these edges, for these little chamfers that we made, most printers should be able to print this overhang here. But I would say for these edges here, I don't think you will very likely need a support material here. So if we look, you can kind of see it kind of prints outward. Now, if you want to add support material, that's fine, but I think my printer should be able to handle this. So if we take a look how it prints it out, you can see kind of like the way it does it. Now, in this instance, what I think is going to happen is that if we send this off to print, the bottom edge just might sag just a little bit, but not a lot where it's going to affect the entirety or the entire look of the design. So with that said, I'm going to send this off to print, and I'll be back once I have the final results. So with that said, that pretty much wraps up today's video. Let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section of this video. And as well as if you guys have any feedback or still need help with anything, make sure to drop it down below in the comments, as I do read your comments and I do read them to make sure to make these videos better for you guys. Additionally, if you guys haven't already, make sure to join the 3D printing community. Down below in the description, we have over almost 400 members in this community, and this community is growing every single day. And more or less, my mission is to help you overall get better with 3D printing, 3D modeling, and maybe even build a side hustle off of this hobby. So with that said, this is Brandon signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video.